Russia deploying its deadliest warship, dubbed the Sea Terminator, armed with unstoppable hypersonic missiles. The vessel is a serious threat to aircraft carriers and submarines.
At 6:42 local time, the aircraft carrier's primary surface search radar completes a routine sweep and immediately repeats it. The second pass takes less than 3 seconds. In the Combat Information Center, the radar operator pauses, not because the display is unclear, but because it is too clean. 3 new surface contacts sit on the scope, sharp and defined, spaced evenly enough to suggest coordination rather than coincidence. No drift, no wander, no randomness, just motion. The sea around the carrier is darker here than most oceans, heavy and deep, with long rolling swells that rise and fall like slow breathing. High clouds filter the early morning light, turning the horizon into a dull metallic line. Visibility is good, but deceptive. Distances compress easily in this light. On the radar, the numbers tell a clearer story. Bearing 312 degrees, range 27 nautical miles, speed increasing steadily. The tactical plot redraws itself automatically. Predictive vectors stretch forward, thin lines pointing directly toward the carrier's projected path. The contacts do not deviate. They commit. The operator calls it out. New surface contacts, 3 tracks, tight formation. The watch supervisor steps closer, eyes scanning the data. No urgency in his movement, but no hesitation either. Any AIS? Negative. No civilian identifiers. Electronic support measures begin their work quietly, sifting through the electromagnetic spectrum for anything intentional. For now, there is nothing. No active radar. No radio chatter. Just silence. On the bridge, the officer of the deck receives the update without reaction. He shifts his stance slightly, one hand resting on the console, eyes flicking between the horizon and the repeater display. This is not unusual, yet, but it is trending that way. Recommend initial hail, he says calmly. The recommendation moves through the chain without friction. Radios come alive across international guard frequencies, the carrier's call transmitted clearly and professionally. Unidentified naval vessels. This is a United States Navy aircraft carrier operating in international waters. State your intentions. The transmission is recorded automatically. Time-stamped, logged. The sea offers no response. Instead, the contacts close distance. Their speed increases, not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a way that removes any remaining doubt about intent. Half a knot. Then another. Enough to matter. Below the flight deck, the carrier tightens without spectacle. Watertight doors are dogged shut. Access points are controlled. Sailors move with purpose, but without haste. No running, no raised voices. This is Condition 3 behavior. Not battle stations, not routine. The space in between. In the Combat Information Center, consoles brighten as systems transition from passive monitoring to active awareness. Track numbers are assigned. Sensor fusion layers begin stacking data, radar, optics, infrared, into a single evolving picture. Range drops to 24 nautical miles. The watch supervisor speaks evenly. Contacts maneuvering together, course adjustments synchronized. That matters. Merchant traffic does not move this way. Fishing fleets do not hold geometry. Civilian vessels do not close distance without broadcasting identity. On the bridge, the captain arrives without ceremony. He does not ask questions. One look at the plot tells him everything he needs to know. Maintain course. Maintain speed. The order is simple and deliberate. The carrier does not deviate. This matters legally. In international waters, The vessel that holds course and speed establishes baseline behavior. Any unsafe maneuvering is documented relative to that baseline. Outwardly, nothing changes. Inwardly, everything begins recording. Radar sweeps archive automatically. Optical systems begin long-range stabilization. Infrared sensors resolve heat signatures against cold steel hulls on the horizon. The contacts sharpen. Mast configurations, sensor arrays, hull silhouettes, identification firms, Russian surface combatants. The intelligence watch confirms it quietly, almost clinically. No reaction follows. Nationality does not alter posture. Intent does. The Russian ships continue inward, now inside 21 nautical miles. Their headings shift subtly, not parallel, not trailing. They angle toward the carrier's projected track. This is no longer casual presence. This is pressure. At 6:49, the captain orders a second hail. Russian naval vessels, you are maneuvering in proximity to a United States Navy aircraft carrier. Alter course and state your intentions. The radio remains silent. Moments later, electronic support measures register activity. A brief, low-power surface search radar sweep. Rotational, controlled. Gone almost as quickly as it appears. They're painting, the EW officer reports. Search radar only. No fire control. This is probing behavior, testing response time, measuring discipline. The carrier responds by doing nothing. Speed unchanged. Course unchanged. The ship's wake remains perfectly straight, cutting cleanly through the rolling swells. Escort ships adjust subtly. A guided missile cruiser widens its station by fractions of a mile, opening space without advertising movement. A destroyer shifts bearing just enough to maintain overlapping coverage. The formation flexes without breaking. On the flight deck, sailors stand at their stations, eyes forward, posture neutral. No unnecessary movement, no visible tension. Range drops to 18 nautical miles. CPA calculations update automatically. Under 5 nautical miles if trends continue. Time to CPA, under 12 minutes. The encounter has crossed an invisible line. In the Combat Information Center, the watch supervisor notes it quietly. Recommend documenting maneuver trend. The captain nods once. Begin incident log. From this moment forward, the interaction is no longer just seamanship. It is evidence. Every course change, every speed adjustment, every second of silence. All of it is preserved. The Russian ships hold their inward angle, neither backing off nor charging recklessly. This is disciplined pressure, the kind designed to force the other side to blink first. The carrier does not blink. At 6:55 local time, the geometry shifts again. Not dramatically, not recklessly, just enough to matter. On the tactical display, the lead Russian ship alters course by 2 degrees to port. It is a small change, clean, controlled, and precise. To anyone not watching vectors redraw in real time, it might look accidental. 30 seconds later, the trailing ships mirror the adjustment. In the Combat Information Center, the surface picture bends inward. The watch supervisor does not raise his voice. Tracks reducing CPA, he reports. Pattern consistent with pressure approach. The numbers confirm it. Closest point of approach drops below 4 nautical miles. Time to CPA compresses to 9 minutes. That combination draws attention. Ships of this size do not have room for ambiguity at those distances. Every knot of speed, every degree of heading, compounds rapidly. At sea, geometry is destiny. On the bridge, the captain studies the bearing lines without speaking. He watches how the projected paths intersect. Not directly, not yet, but close enough to force a response if trends continue. He does not give one. "Log unsafe maneuver," he says calmly. The phrase is procedural, but it carries weight. An unsafe maneuver is not an opinion. It is a legal designation. From this moment on, the encounter is governed by record, not interpretation. In the Combat Information Center, the incident log opens automatically. Time, bearing, range, speed, everything is captured down to fractions. Below decks, the carrier slides deeper into readiness. No alarms sound, no announcements echo through passageways. Instead, the ship tightens quietly. Systems are energized, safeties disengage, weapons crews report status without being asked. This is not escalation, this is preparedness. At 6:57, electronic support measures register another emission. Slightly stronger than the first, still rotational, still brief. "They're active again," the EW officer reports. "Low-power surface search, not fire control." That distinction matters. Fire control radar would mark a different phase entirely. This remains probing, measuring how quickly the carrier responds, how tightly the formation holds. The carrier responds by holding steady, speed unchanged, course unchanged. The wake behind the ship remains a straight, unwavering line, even as the swells roll beneath it. Escort ships continue adjusting, but only just. A destroyer slides outward by a quarter mile, widening the defensive arc without advertising intent. Another ship shifts bearing to preserve overlapping coverage. To an outside observer, the formation appears unchanged. To anyone watching the plot, invisible doors are closing. On the flight deck, a helicopter crew receives a quiet signal. No verbal order, no announcement, just a shift in posture. The rotors begin turning slowly, blades creaking at first, then smoothing out as speed increases. The aircraft remains chained down, presence without provocation. The Russian ships continue closing. 15 nautical miles, then 14. Their wakes sharpen as speed increases in controlled increments. Half a knot here, another there. No sudden surges, no obvious tells. In CIC, the CPA recalculates again. 3.2 nautical miles, time to CPA 8 minutes. That number matters. The watch supervisor glances at the captain's repeater feed, then back to the plot. "These maneuvers are trending unsafe," he adds. Not as a warning, as a statement of fact. On the bridge, the captain steps closer to the forward windows. His hands rest lightly on the console. "Hail them again." The radio transmission goes out, clear and firm. "Russian naval vessels, you are maneuvering unsafely in international waters. Alter course immediately." The channel stays silent. At 7:01, the lead Russian ship adjusts again. A fractional cut inward, small enough to look cautious, precise enough to shave tenths off the CPA. Inside the carrier, response is invisible but absolute. Optical systems lock fully. Long-range lenses stabilize on bridge wings, gun mounts, deck crews. Infrared overlays map heat signatures across hulls. Engine exhaust, running gear, human movement topside. Every frame is time-stamped, every angle preserved. The carrier's forward gun mount rotates slightly. Not toward a firing solution, not tracking. Visible. A quiet signal that the ship is fully aware. No course change, no speed change. At 7:03, something subtle happens. One of the trailing Russian ships turns just a fraction wider than planned. The others compensate, but the formation loses perfect symmetry. In the Combat Information Center, someone notes it quietly. They're starting to feel compressed. Pressure works both ways. The helicopter lifts just enough for its skids to clear the deck, then settles back down. Engines remain hot. Crew strapped in. Sensors live. Escalation remains optional. Preparation does not. Range drops below 12 nautical miles. CPA now under 3 nautical miles. Time to CPA, 6 minutes. That window is shrinking. On the bridge, the captain's voice remains even. Continue logging. This matters legally. By maintaining course and speed, the carrier establishes that it is not the maneuvering party. Any further closure is on the Russian ships. At 7:05, electronic emissions spike again. Brief, narrow, directional. Surface radar active, EW reports, still not fire control. The distinction is growing thinner. The helicopter rotors increase speed, the sound rolling across the deck and over the water. Sailors nearby do not react. This is expected. This is controlled. The Russian ships continue inward, now at 10 nautical miles. Through optics, individual features become clearer. Antennas, bridge windows, crew movement topside, close enough that mistakes stop being abstract. In CIC, the watch supervisor calls out the updated geometry. CPA 2.5 nautical miles. Time to CPA 5 minutes. The captain does not speak immediately. He watches the bearing lines converge, then flicks his gaze to the horizon, then back to the plot. He nods once. Mark continued unsafe maneuvering. The log updates. Every second now builds a record that cannot be disputed later. The carrier remains steady. No deviation. No visible reaction. Out here, the most powerful move is often refusing to make one. At 7:08 local time, the encounter changes character. Not because of words, not because of weapons, because of timing. On the tactical plot, the lead Russian ship increases speed, noticeably this time. Not a gradual half-knot adjustment, but a deliberate surge. Nearly 2 knots added in under 30 seconds. The acceleration is smooth, controlled, and unmistakable. At the same moment, its rudder shifts, only a few degrees, but enough. The bow begins to cut inward, not toward parallel movement, not toward shadowing distance, toward interception. In the Combat Information Center, the surface picture tightens instantly. Predictive vectors redraw in real time, narrowing the water between hulls to margins measured in seconds rather than miles. The watch supervisor speaks clearly. Lead contact accelerating. Course alteration detected. A beat. CPA dropping below 2 nautical miles. That number matters. Below 2 nautical miles, there is no room for ambiguity. At that distance, reaction windows compress brutally. Human judgment has less space to compensate for error. Geometry becomes unforgiving. On the bridge, the captain does not look away from the horizon. His posture remains unchanged. Mark it, he says evenly. Unsafe maneuver. Log, time, and bearing. The designation is immediate. The incident log updates. Time stamps lock in. Sensor feeds are flagged for priority archive. The trailing Russian ships attempt to maintain formation, but the acceleration disrupts timing. One ship follows the lead too late. Another overcorrects its rudder to compensate. The geometry fractures. What had been disciplined pressure becomes compressed risk. In CIC, the watch supervisor notes it quietly. Formation losing synchronization. That loss matters. Coordinated movement is control. Desynchronization is strain. The carrier still does not respond with motion. Speed holds, course holds. The wake remains straight. This matters legally and tactically. By holding steady, the carrier forces responsibility for closure onto the maneuvering party. Every additional degree of inward cut, belongs to the Russian ships alone. At 7:09, electronic surveillance lights up again. New emissions, the EW officer reports. Surface radar, narrow beam, directional. Still not fire control, but closer. The line is thinning. That is when the carrier responds. Not with speed, not with sound, with visibility. The forward gun mount rotates, slow, deliberate, unmistakable. The movement is smooth, mechanical, and precise. It does not track a firing solution. It does not lock. It communicates. From the Russian ships, the motion is impossible to miss. From the carrier, it is simply posture. At the same time, the helicopter lifts cleanly from the flight deck. Rotors bite into the air as the aircraft slides forward, staying low over the water. No flares, no doors open, no visible armament, just sensors awake, cameras rolling. In CIC, live feeds begin streaming. High-resolution imagery overlays the tactical plot. Infrared highlights heat signatures, engine exhaust, bridge interiors, crew movement topside. Everything is recorded. At 7:11, the range drops below 6 nautical miles. At this distance, optics resolve faces on deck. Hull numbers become readable. Mistakes stop being theoretical. The lead Russian ship cuts inward again, measured, controlled, designed to force a reaction without triggering collision protocols. The carrier gives none. Instead, the escorts move. A destroyer widens station by half a mile, sliding outward to close an approach angle. A cruiser adjusts bearing slightly, maintaining overlapping coverage. Another destroyer shifts speed by a fraction of a knot, tightening the defensive geometry. To an outside observer, the formation looks unchanged. To anyone watching the plot, the available water shrinks rapidly. Invisible doors close. The helicopter sweeps across the Russian bows at a safe distance. The camera turret tracks smoothly. A green laser designator flicks on briefly, painting steel bridge windows and mast structures. Non-lethal, non-negotiable. In CIC, the effect is immediate. One trailing ship reducing speed, the watch supervisor reports. Second ship hesitating. Pressure has shifted. The lead Russian ship holds its inward angle for a few seconds longer, then stops tightening it. The bow no longer cuts deeper. The CPA stabilizes, just under 2 nautical miles, still unsafe, no longer escalating. At 7:13, electronic emissions begin to drop off. Radar spikes fade, the spectrum quiets. They're backing off sensors, EW notes. On the bridge, the captain finally speaks again. Maintain course. Maintain speed. The carrier continues on, unmoved. The helicopter widens its orbit, remaining present, but no longer pressing. The message has been delivered. Repeating it would add nothing. In CIC, the watch supervisor updates the log. Escalation arrested. At sea, dominance rarely announces itself. It reveals itself in what the other side stops doing. At 7:15, the range begins to open. 6 nautical miles becomes 6.4. Then 6.8. No announcement accompanies the change. No reaction on the bridge. The carrier does not acknowledge the shift because it does not need to. The Russian ships begin adjusting course outward. The lead vessel eases off first, its bow no longer intersecting the carrier's projected path. The others follow, but not in perfect unison. Formation discipline has fractured. The helicopter maintains a wide orbit. Sensors remain live. Cameras continue rolling. At 7:17, CPA expands beyond 3 nautical miles. That threshold matters. It marks the transition from unsafe maneuvering to distant presence. On the flight deck, sailors remain at stations. No visible release of tension because tension was never displayed. Readiness remains the baseline. In CIC, the surface picture relaxes without ever going cold. Tracks remain tagged. Sensors stay live. Nothing is erased. At 7:19, the helicopter receives the order to return. No flourish, no final pass. It turns smoothly, climbs slightly, and heads back toward the carrier. Sensors continue recording until the last possible moment. The Russian ships continue widening the distance. 7 nautical miles. Then 8. The water opens back up as if the encounter had compressed space rather than time. On the bridge, the captain steps away from the forward windows. Resume standard watch. Not stand down. Not secure. Resume. Because nothing about this encounter required escalation to end. By 0721 local time, the encounter has lost its momentum. Nothing dramatic announces the shift. No sudden turns. No radio calls. No visible retreat. The only indication is mathematical. The numbers on the tactical display begin to drift apart instead of collapsing inward. 6.8 nautical miles becomes 7.2. Then 7.6. In the Combat Information Center, the watch supervisor reports it in the same voice used for routine updates. Contacts continuing to open distance, speeds steady to decreasing. There is no reaction on the bridge, no nod, no acknowledgement. The change does not require commentary. It is not an outcome to celebrate. It is a condition to preserve. The Russian ships adjust their headings again, this time outward. The lead vessel moves first, easing its bow away from the carrier's projected track. The trailing ships follow, but with visible delay. Their movements are no longer synchronized to the second. The geometry that defined the approach has dissolved. Formation discipline has fractured. That matters. In naval encounters, discipline is control. When it erodes, initiative shifts. The helicopter continues its wide orbit for several more minutes, maintaining altitude and distance. Sensors remain active. Cameras continue recording. The aircraft does not descend or signal. Its presence is now observational, not corrective. In CIC, electronic surveillance confirms the change. Russian emissions minimal, the EW officer reports. No active search sweeps detected. Silence, in this context, is compliance. The escort ships hold their adjusted stations. No one rushes to close ranks. No one relaxes posture prematurely. The defensive geometry remains intact, layered, and patient. At 7:26, the helicopter receives a quiet instruction to return. There is no announcement on the flight deck. The aircraft simply turns, climbs slightly, and eases back toward the carrier. The sound of the rotors fades into the ship's constant mechanical hum. Sensors continue recording until the moment the aircraft crosses the deck edge. Blades fold. Engines wind down. Memory modules are removed and secured. What happened here will not be debated later. It will be reviewed. The Russian ships continue widening the gap. 8 nautical miles, then 9. Their wakes stretch longer now, less compressed, less urgent. Speed holds steady. No further inward movement appears on the plot. In the Combat Information Center, the surface picture settles into routine geometry. Tracks remain tagged. Sensor coverage remains continuous. Nothing is cleared. Nothing is erased. This is how modern naval encounters end. Not with explosions, not with declarations, with data. Every maneuver from the past 40 minutes is already archived. Radar sweeps, optical frames, infrared signatures, electronic emissions, course changes down to tenths of a degree. The story has been written in timestamps. On the bridge, The captain reviews the incident log in silence. Unsafe maneuvers documented, warnings issued, restraint maintained. The carrier's course line remains perfectly straight from start to finish. That detail matters. The carrier never altered course, never altered speed, never surrendered control of the space around it. Below decks, sailors rotate off stations with the same discipline they arrived with. There is no adrenaline spike, no animated retelling of near misses. Professionalism does not surge and fade. It remains constant, because professionalism is not a reaction. It is a baseline. At 7:33, the encounter is formally downgraded. No broadcast, no audible cue, just a quiet shift in posture across the ship. The carrier strike group slides back into its standard transit rhythm without ceremony. Aircraft cycles resume overhead. Escort ships hold their lanes. The sea returns to its indifferent motion. Far on the horizon, the Russian ships remain visible. Small, dark shapes against the morning light. They are still present, still tracked, but no longer shaping events. They are reacting to them. At sea, reaction is a concession. This moment will not dominate headlines. There will be no dramatic footage released to the public. No official statement crafted to frame the encounter. That is not how dominance is measured in these waters. Dominance is measured by who controlled the timeline, who controlled the geometry, who forced the final adjustment. The answer is visible in the wake patterns trailing behind each hull. The carrier's wake never bent. By 7:45, the strike group is fully back into routine transit. To an outside observer, it looks as if nothing unusual occurred. That is the point. Because the most decisive naval encounters often end without noise, without spectacle, and without acknowledgement. They end when one side understands precisely where the line is and chooses not to cross it. Out here, restraint is not the absence of power. It is power exercised with precision. And the ocean remembers who held their course,